Thank you so much for being in the theater. I wish I could be with you, but we are in the distance, but we can communicate.
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you for your beautiful movie. A very emotional final, very between drama, fantasy, and but also reality. From the beginning to the end, the movie reminds us that there's also a lot of reality behind it. There is something real that is maybe the point of start of your movie. Could you please tell us something about how you had the idea, you and Fanny, the co-director of the movie?
Yes, I will talk for Fanny and I. She couldn't be here tonight, but we are a duo of filmmakers. We do everything together, from the writing to the directing and the editing. And so, well, we are friends with Fanny since we were 18 years old. We met when we studied political sciences, and at this time we didn't know we wanted to make movies. We were lucky to travel together in South America, and I tell you that because I think it had an impact on our way to look at the world and on our willing to tell stories somehow.
Okay,
And
please let me know if someone needs translation, so just a
it's
moment.
okay.
Qualcuno ha bisogno di traduzione o capite tutti? Nessuno ha bisogno di traduzione? Ok, ok, they don't need translation. You can go on, thank you.
Thank you. Well, so 7 years ago, we arrived in Paris, Fanny and I, with the willing of making movies, but we didn't really study cinema, so it was something unknown for us. It was just a dream. And architect friends of us were working on the future demolition of a building named Gagarine in the suburbs of Paris in the south, in Ivry-sur-Seine. And they asked us if we were curious to go there to make documentary portraits of the inhabitants over there. We went there and we had a real shock. I think first of all a visual shock because of this huge red brick block of 400 apartments that looked like a spaceship from the very first sight we had at it. Then, because of its history, learning to understand that an astronaut had inaugurated the place in the 60s, and the present of this place that was going to be demolished, and it meant at that time that an entire community was going to disappear. And when we went back in the subway from this first encounter, Fanny and I, we were like, with stars in the eye and kind of moved, and we said we have to make a fiction here. And we remembered of a contest of a short film script that was ending 5 days later, and the global theme was give your point of view on housing projects on places like Gagarine. And so we had never wrote a script of our life, but in 5 days we wrote Gagarin, a short film of 15 minutes that already told the story of this young man, this young Yuri, looking at his building as if it was his own spaceship and not willing to leave this place because it was his entire family. And so that was our first step. We did this film in 2015, and in 2016 it began to go in festivals, and we met a French producer who asked us, do you have any plan for a feature film maybe? And we felt that 15 minutes wasn't enough to tell the entire story of Gagarin, and so we said we'd like to do it as a feature. And the journey kept on. We kept on working next to the inhabitants with the same team, with this producer for years, until we were able to shoot this film at the summer of 2019, right before the building was demolished, and we were able to shoot it in the building
Oh,
with the inhabitants of the place.
okay.
There are some actors and a lot of inhabitants.
Well, this is very interesting. So you really could shoot the movie inside and outside the real building, and you talked with the inhabitants, and you got to know them and to know their stories.
It was something necessary for us. Of course, from the very beginning, we were not from this place, and we understood that making a film there was going to create somehow an object of memory for a community that was going to be splitted. And so we felt that we had to make this film with them. And so very humbly, we went to knock on doors and to present ourselves to the local inhabitants and associations, organizations of young, elder people. And I think the people from the very beginning of the project understood that we were willing to change the point of view on places that are too often shown the same way. Usually when you see a movie that takes place in a building like Gagarine, the story is about a drug dealer or about violence. And of course, there is a difficult social reality, but there is so much more stories to be told. And when the people understood that, I think they decided they wanted to be part of it. And so during years, we did workshops, short films with the inhabitants that fed the writing of the feature film. And at the end, during the shooting, all the collective scene you can see, from the eclipse to the very end, you can see hundreds of faces of the real inhabitants of Gagarine. And yes, we absolutely wanted to shoot in the real place. It was tricky, it was kind of a run against the clock, but we were lucky to be able to shoot in it. And at the end, it was amazing because we had the entire building for us and to be able to build Yuri's spaceship in it.
Yeah, because you could shoot part of the film when the people had already had to go away, correct?
Yes. When we arrived to shoot the feature, everybody had gone, and actually the demolition team was already here. So we've been roommates with the demolition team who were looking like astronauts somehow because they were cleaning the inside of the building before demolishing it all. And they gave us a part of the building, meanwhile they were beginning to demolish it.
I will see if there are questions from the audience. C'è qualcuno che vuole fare una domanda, che ha qualche curiosità, qualcosa? Ecco, arrivo subito.
Hi, I'm Marco. Thank you for the beautiful film. And I want to know if you wished to have more time to shoot the film in the building, or maybe you would loved to have still people living there in the houses and maybe shoot something, some intimate stuff in the houses, or it's actually better like this, that you have everything empty and so you could do whatever you wanted, maybe. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Well, during the years of writing, we were becoming friends with the inhabitants and we shot some of them, but we didn't use this footage because at the end we wrote a real fiction. And so the real life you're mentioning that would have been interesting to maybe have as an additional element, I think we found it in the archives we used. So if you look at the movie, there are different moments where we use archives, like the very first images of Yuri Gagarin inaugurating the place, but also moments, more private, intimate videos of family tapes. For instance, you have Alseni Batili, our young actor, when he was a kid dancing with his mom. And the other videos of other inhabitants, it's videos of inhabitants of Gagarin in the 60s, 70s, 80s, having intimate moments of their life in Christmas and things like that. And I think we used that and we put it in contrast with the empty apartments where people, when they left, many times left intimate details like photographs on the walls, furniture, sometimes even food. And all those elements, we used it in our shooting. And I feel maybe the soul of the inhabitants can be felt through these little details.
I'm interested in knowing better how you built the main character. We see all the things that happen through his eyes, and he's really very integrated in the community. He loves that spirit of community. that is in the building, and he identifies with the building itself, and at the end he is so lonely, so isolated. How did you arrive to build this character?
Well, there are different elements in Yuri. I think we wanted him to be somehow a representation of our youth, our French youth, who live in poor suburbs and who is so full of dreams and strength and fragility at the same time, and that we need to take care of somehow. And so to create this metaphor of this youth, we wanted to go far from the cliche somehow, the cliche of masculinity, the cliche of yeah, what you can expect when you see a movie with a young from a project. Yuri is full of dreams. I guess he received a lot of love, maybe from his mom, maybe also from the rest of the community, which gave him confidence in his dreams. But at the beginning of the movie, he lacks somehow the conscience that he won't be able to make it all by himself, that he will need the others. And this is a process. We wanted him to also. So the movie begins with those archives of Yuri Gagarin inaugurating the building. Those images for us represent a dream of progress at the time in the 60s, but also something about utopias of that time, living together, and a vision of society. And right after that, we arrive in Yuri's room, and we discover this young boy, and he somehow narrates of all this past. He becomes our contemporary Yuri, and from that moment, we won't leave him. We will see all the things through his point of view. And so all the movie after that was to think how Yuri looks at the outside world, and how are we going to make it possible to understand his point of view, even understand his radicality when he has no other choice but to stay alone in the building. Well, he has to go deep into his dreams to find a survival option. One last thing maybe I can say about Yuri is that during the writing, many people, when they read the script, they were saying, okay, but this young is too naive, he's too kind, it's not possible. And we were lucky to see a beautiful movie during the writing that gave us confidence about this kindness. It was an Italian movie of Alice Rohrweicher, Lazzaro Felice, which is a movie we love. And we love because she created a character that we had never seen before. Someone somehow perfect, like
Yeah, it's
with
the perfect pure.
yes, and it gave us somehow confidence in our Yuri to see the character of Lazzaro.
Ok. C'è qualche altra domanda da parte del pubblico? Sì, there is another question here.
Hello, thank you for the movie, first of all. And then I was a bit curious about the. I know that the community was already leaving when you started shooting, and it was a bit in a rush. But I'm wondering if there was. I mean, you said there were interviews and there was a shootage of the people, but I'm wondering if there was a moment after of giving back on somehow how the community perceived you, and your point. Of course, it's pretty clear your point of view from the movie. I mean, not clear, but you can grasp something. But I don't know if you have something to say about the people that they were leaving, and how was the process for them. Of course, we saw something from the movie, but I'd like to hear something more about this.
Of course. So I can only talk about the precise situation of Gagarine. This demolition process happens in many places around the world, and I think it can be quite different from a city to another. I say that because in Ivry-sur-Seine, the city of Gagarine, it's a communist town, and like for instance, the mayor and the elected people, they lived in Gagarine with the inhabitants. So there is something quite uncommon somehow, so, which means they took a lot of care about the inhabitants and the process of reallocation of the people. Even though they took care of this process and tried to do it as best as they could, it's a difficult process for the people because you ask them to leave their home sometimes for 60 years, where the grandparent, the kids, and the grandkids have their own apartments in it. And what I can say is, before the process of demolition, there was quite a lot of people that were happy to leave the place because they had gotten quite tired of hearing, we're going to demolish, oh no, finally we're going to rebuild it, oh no, finally we're not going to do nothing. It had been going like this for 15 years, I think. So at the end of this, the people, they were, I want to go, that's okay. And also because the building was kind of falling apart. It was the most difficult I felt for the youngest and the elder, for different reasons, obviously, but it was the population for who it was the tougher acceptance to go. After the process of making the film, we had a restitution, of course. We were so happy. So the film was filmed before COVID. We sent it to Cannes, and it was selected to Cannes, and we had dreamt of it, of bringing all the inhabitants to the red carpet, and so it was like a big celebration, but it couldn't happen because of COVID. So what we did is we decided to create a Cannes in Ivry-sur-Seine. There is a little theater next to what was Gagarine. Now Gagarine isn't here anymore, but we organized a beautiful evening with a red carpet and all the inhabitants and the team. And something beautiful happened at that. The theater is quite big, like there is like, I don't know, 400 seats or something. And so we did 2 screenings on the row, and everybody was sitting, and we went to take the microphone and said, oh, at the end of the movie, okay, please, everybody who took part of the film, come to the scene. And everybody stood up, and there was nobody sitting anymore. And I felt that it was quite joyful to see that people had taken the film as if it was their film, because it is. And yes, maybe I'm talking a lot. Sorry.
It must have been a wonderful evening. I can imagine.
Great emotions, yes.
So the movie is really full of also of fantasy from the point of view of Yuri, his dreams, his imagination, and this wonderful space ship that he is creating. There is a lot of creativity in the movie, but it's very linked to hands, to physical creativity. He and also the girl, they are very smart in doing things with hands and creating worlds for themselves and for the other people. At the beginning, he just does practical things for the buildings so that people can stay there, but then he really creates his own world. And it's really a physical creativity that's really impressing.
Yeah, we like the idea that both Yuri and Diana, they repair things. That's what they do. They don't give up. And to repair, you have to put your hands in the stuff. And they also like to understand things. It's a quality they share. And I think that's one of the reasons why they fall in love somehow. It was, of course, for us a great pleasure to have this game to take part of with all our team, the construction, the DOP, the costumes, to look at so many sci-fi movies, but also at the real spaceships to understand, okay, how Yuri is going to do that on his own way, being a king of recycling somehow. It was very joyful. Maybe one thing I can add about that is that one of the biggest challenge for us at all the steps of making this movie was to find a balance between reality and fantasy. We found an answer adopting Yuri's point of view and not leaving this point of view. So it gives us the opportunity to have fantasy growing in the film somehow, because at the beginning we are kind of rooted in the reality, because during the 31st minutes the people are still here, and Yuri, he has dreams of space, he has this little fantasy in his head, but he's very grounded with the people. And so the way we shoot at him and at the community are also kind of traditional, naturalistic way. And because he gets isolated and creates this spaceship and go further and further in his fantasy, well, the language of the movie goes changing a little towards sci-fi language somehow, on the camera movements, on the lightnings, on the colors, until we get in the very space with Yuri and his spaceship in weightlessness.
Yeah, it's very interesting because as long as he goes on building his strange world inside the building, we see that actually he's going deeper into his pain, into his isolation. So while he's creating something that is very nice and extraordinary, at the same time he is going deep inside himself, and he's getting far from the rest of the world. But at the end, when the lights comes out of the building and people can see them, he has also created a connection with the exterior. So it's ambiguous and it's very rich, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always challenging not to be black or white, you know, to try to create ambiguous emotions, because that's the reality. But sometimes it's easier to say it's all joyful or all sad. Gagarin is kind of both, and I have in different screenings seen people at the very same moment when Yuri is expulsed into space. I've seen people laughing and some other people crying at the same moment, and I totally understand both of reactions, because on the one hand he goes at the top of his dreams, but on the other hand he's at the top of his isolation, and maybe on a door very close to death and to the nothing. And we wanted to bring back light because we wanted to have a hopeful movie also. So there is this SOS, and there is this community that is here at the end and receives this final SOS. I think it was a vision we had from the very beginning, and that was very important for us to create.
It appears to me that there is not a very precise social and political statement in the movie, but there is a strong statement towards a sort of blind progress, a sort of blind movement of society towards his goals that are not so good for everybody.
It's a complex question because I feel we have. I feel it's quite easy to say that, but every art is political because you You talk about the world you live in, the society. So any kind of expression says something about it. And when we make a movie about people, a youth growing up in a part of our society that is invisible to the rest of the society, is very stigmatized many times. You can't be otherwise but political. But we didn't want to make a militant movie. I guess we wanted tenderness, even though we were saying things about inequalities and problems existence. About the March of Progress, I don't have really I could feel what you say at the end of your question, but at the same time, I don't have the exact solutions. What I feel and what we want to say is that we may have a lack of utopias today, and when we look at our youth, we feel that they are full of utopias in their mind and in their heart, and they have this in a togetherness way that gives us hope for the future.
Thank you. C'è qualche altra domanda dal pubblico? No? Okay, so questions have finished. So first of all, I will ask you if you are working at something new, some new movie.
Yes, we are working in 2 different movies. We are just back from New York, where we are writing a sci-fi movie.
And always with together with Fanny?
Yes, always with Fanny. And together again, we are working on another French language. This was one New York is in English language, and the one we are working in a French language movie that will also talk about some invisible people of our society. But this time it will not take place in a urban context, but in a huge forest in the southwest of France named Les Landes.
Okay, so good luck with your future new projects, and thank you very much for having been here with us, and I hope you can come physically at Cinema Beltrade in future, maybe with your future films.
That would be beautiful. Thank you so much for screening the film in your cinema. Thank you to the people in the theater for listening to me and watching the movie. I hope you enjoyed it.
I think so. Thank you very much. I think they enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye. See you next time then. Ciao, arrivederci.